Jack was a blacksmith. He'd been apprenticed to his father, and now he worked with him. And it was a very hot day in summer, far too hot to go inside to eat their midday meal. So Jack's mother brought it out to them, and they sat out in front of the forge. And down the hill came a knight in shining armour, on a beautiful white charger. At least, it should have been a beautiful white charger. In actual fact, it was the boniest, skinniest old nag you have ever seen. But the knight stopped outside the forge, dismounted, and said to the blacksmith, "Do you have a hammer, my man?" Well, to ask a blacksmith if he had a hammer, it was a ridiculous question, so the blacksmith said, "Yes, I have many hammers." "May I borrow one?" "Oh, yes, of course, sir." And so Jack's father took the knight into the back of the blacksmith's shop, and the blacksmith picked off hammers off the wall and felt them and said, "This seems a good hammer," and walked outside. Jack looked at his father, and his father looked at Jack. Before they could say anything, the knight had lifted up that heavy hammer and started hitting the horse. And Jack looked at his father, and his father looked at Jack, and there was blood everywhere, and bones everywhere. And Jack looked at his father, and his father looked at Jack, and then there was a poof. And there stood the beautiful white charger a knight should have. Jack looked at his father, and his father looked at Jack, and the knight handed the hammer back to the smith and said, "That was a very good hammer. Keep it, my man, I might need it again," and got on his horse and rode off. And Jack looked at his father, and his father looked at Jack, and Jack's father said, "You know that old pony of ours?" And Jack said, "Father, you can't." But his father went and got that old pony, and got the hammer, and lifted it up, and there was blood, and there was bones, and there was skin, and there was no flesh. All the two men could do was to put all this horrible mess on a trestle and take it down to the bog and throw it in. There was no way they could tell neighbours what had happened. Well, time passed. It was about a year, and it was another fine warm day, and Jack and his father sat outside the forge, and down the hill, in bright shining armour, came a knight on a white charger, and up behind him was a beautiful lady. At least, it should have been a beautiful lady. In actual fact, it was an ugly old crone, sort where the nose comes down to meet the chin. Oh, well, she wasn't beautiful. She couldn't help it, but she wasn't beautiful. But the knight stopped, helped the lady off, and Jack looked at his father, and his father looked at Jack, and the knight said, "My good man, do you still have that hammer?" Yes, of course, sir." "May I borrow it again?" Yes." And Jack looked at his father, and father looked at Jack, and Jack's father went in and fetched the hammer and handed it to the knight, raised it above his head, and Jack looked at his father, and his father looked at Jack, and before they could say anything or stop the man, the knight had lifted up that hammer and started beating the old woman. And there were cries and screams and blood everywhere and skin everywhere, and there was a poof, and there was the most beautiful woman Jack or his father had ever seen. And the knight handed back the hammer to Jack's father, helped the lady onto the horse, and got up, and they rode away. And Jack looked at his father, and his father looked at Jack, and Jack's father said, "You know your mother, she's getting on a bit." And Jack said, "No, father, you can't." "If you're a beautiful young woman, I'll share her with you," said Jack's father. But this was too much for Jack. He went to the house, got all his clothes and possessions into a bundle, and left home. Well, he had to find work. Even though he was a qualified blacksmith, it wasn't that easy to find work, and a few days later he was sitting on a stone, possibly a milestone, when a neighbour came by and said, "Jack, are you looking for work?" "Oh, yes." Well, there's a proclamation posted on the walls of the palace, and the king's got a sore on the back of his neck, and if anyone can cure him, they can marry the princess and have half the kingdom. You could always try your hand. And into Jack's mind came what we'll call dung. And, of course, things like that can cure, but also came into Jack's mind the thought of all the courtiers in all their lace and velvet, collecting fresh cow pats. And Jack made his way down to the palace, and the palace guards weren't going to let him in, but he said it didn't say it couldn't be the likes of Jack. And so Jack went before the king and bowed low and said, "I think I can cure your sore, your majesty." And the king was ready to try anything. And so for the next few days, in all their lace and velvets, all the courtiers and the court servants went out with buckets and picked up the fresh cow pats and anything else they could find, and it was put as a poultice on the king's neck, and it worked. In no time at all, the king's wound was healed. Jack was to marry the princess. All was set for the wedding. Church was full. Jack was standing at the front, and down the aisle came the beautiful princess. Except that as she got nearer and nearer to Jack, her face turned into the face of his mother, and there was a hand on his shoulder shaking him, saying, "Wake up, Jack! Wake up, Jack!" The whole thing had been a dream.